so excited that you want to learn more because warrior training is my current work. I think it will be the work till the end of my life now for leaders and activists who need to really cope with, deal with, and be contributories to this increasingly terrible time. I don't need to say anything about how we are constantly bombarded with terrible things happening with the climate now, with COVID in South Africa and the travel ban to Southern Africa. This is going to continue. This is our life. And so I was very interested probably 7 or 8 years ago in what would be the skills that leaders and activists would need in order to continue to make a contribution and to serve well during this increasingly turbulent time where the suffering among peoples is just exponentially increasing. That's all background, but I want to specifically share my experience with how I learned to be a warrior by my experiences in South Africa. Now, these are not trivial experiences. In 1994, Colin Hall, who was then CEO of Wooltrue and Woolworths, came to a seminar I was offering where I live in the Rocky Mountains in the state of Utah. And he said to us, it was just after Mandela took power, he said, "You must all come to South Africa. And when you come, you must ask everybody for their story, because what we'd done, we did not do just for ourselves. We did it for the world." I answered that call eagerly, and from 1997 until COVID times, 2019, I was in South Africa 15 times, I think. I came every year, and every year I had extraordinary experiences. And I also led 3 learning journeys for women from Europe, North America, and Australia to meet with a great variety of the women leaders of South Africa, from the self-organized social organizations happening in different townships with young women, or creche formation in different townships, up to working with parliamentarians and also working with 1/3 of the cabinet of Mbeki. I had such experiences of learning about the human spirit, and the foundation of warrior training, it's called Warriors for the Human Spirit. It's also now for the spirit of life. But what I learned in South Africa, and I wrote about it, saying, this is the country of my heart. This is the country where I learned of the worst and the best of human experiences. The endurance, the perseverance, the struggle, the triumphs, the victories, the disappointments. And one of the most important experiences of my life was sitting in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission behind the parents of Amy Beale when her killers were confessing what they had done. And for me, as a parent, it was, how do you handle that? How do you deal with that? And the emotion in the courtroom, I still remember Archbishop Tutu speaking to, trying to understand the emotion of the time that led to her stabbing as she tried to run into a petrol station. Once I witnessed the depth of people's experiences, and more importantly, the depth of their forgiveness, I was forever changed. And I continued to have experiences like that, triumphant experiences of just dancing with women as we brought together women leaders, uh, dancing with women in the townships. And so everything I experienced from 1994 until 2019 with South Africa was fundamental to my formation and my understanding of what it means to have faith in people and to forgive and to persevere. So, of course, in those early days, South Africa was known as both the Rainbow Nation and the nation of hope. And I was always amused at how many of my American colleagues who were so frustrated with what was happening then, we won't talk about now, but what was happening then, they all flocked to South Africa because we were so energized. It was so hopeful. It was so glorious to be in this place where everybody was doing a project. Everybody was making a contribution. Everybody was dreaming about what the future could be and was engaged. And I laughed with them. I said, we had to travel pretty far to rediscover what hope feels like. And then my experience with South Africa, I stayed there long enough. I'm still engaged to see that all of those dreams, all of those efforts were taken over by dynamics beyond our individual capacity to change. And I'm not only speaking of South Africa now, this is happening in the world. The dynamics of power and greed and corporate power and corruption and individual needs to be powerful and important, and the loss of community, as well as all the other problems. Those are general problems around the world. And certainly in South Africa, they have a deeper dimension because there are other issues involved as well. So what I want to say about hope is that I learned in South Africa that hope is unreliable. I've written about this a lot. Hope is an ambush. Hope sucks us in thinking we're going to create positive change, and then when we don't, it creates fear, depression, and cynicism in us. There is a place beyond hope and fear, and it's what I've experienced continuously in South Africa and now in many places in the world for people who step up to be warriors. And that is the clarity that what I'm doing needs to be done no matter its impact. I may succeed, I may fail, but I'm doing this work because I know it needs to be done. This is what I learned from speaking to people in the struggle in South Africa who never gave up. And you never know the outcome of our work, but I'm very clear now that hope is a trap, and I've stayed with South Africa long enough to see. I remember sitting with a wonderful NGO leader in Cape Town in the room. I don't know which organization has it, but it has a statue of Archbishop Tutu flying across, draped from the ceiling. Do any of you know that room? It's gorgeous. You sit there in circle, and there's Archbishop Tutu flying above you. But in this conversation, this wonderful elder woman and I were chatting, and I said, at one point I said, I was here in the good years, in the years when so much was possible. And she just looked at me and just nodded her head with sadness and said yes. But there we were still planning, we were still figuring out what contribution we all could make. So that's what warrior training is about. It's about realizing that we are people who have made a difference, who continue to make a difference, who want to make a difference, and we are not blinded by hope. We are motivated by clear seeing, by seeing something that needs to be done and giving it our wholehearted effort, our wholehearted energy, and we don't do it alone, we do it together. I also remember exactly, we all have these moments of where were you when something happened. I remember, and it was in a seminar that Colin Hall from Wooltrue had sponsored. I remember when someone came up to me and said, Meg, you need to know about Ubuntu. I had never heard the term. So this is 1997. I had never heard the term. I immediately was just aroused by it. I began teaching about it, and every time I was in South Africa, I would ask people, what does Ubuntu mean to you? And one time when I was talking, it was at a game lodge, and I was speaking to one of the young men there. I asked him, I said, what does Ubuntu mean to you? And he just looked at me, and he said, well, it means human. And that's been my favorite definition of Ubuntu, human. So in warrior training, we need to develop skills that are not part of the usual leadership training or professional training. Even if we're very skilled at running groups, we're very skilled at creating, building community, we're very skilled at good listening, we're very skilled at understanding the issues of diversity and inclusion and racial issues, social justice issues. We've developed enormous capacities in those arenas, at least many of us have, and they're not enough. They're not enough when you are in a meeting and someone goes crazy on you, gets really aggressive, and changes the whole tone of the meeting. Now, that happens, in my experience, far too often. And what do we do when our projects fail and we're just taken down with despair? That's normal. What do we do when we just are willing to take in what's happening and we truly perceive at the soul level, at the heart level, how much suffering is going on and how terrible it is? And when we have the realization that it didn't have to be this way, there were solutions, there were ways to bring people together, but it's not the reality of this time. The reality of this time is that these dynamics of greed, power, ego, and destruction, carelessness, destruction, that includes for people, for migrants, for the poor, but it also includes the planet now. This is what we're dealing with, and this will not change. We are dealing with cycles of civilizations, and we are in the final cycle. And that's when the warriors arise. And the warriors have their professional skills, but they have the necessary skills they need to still be of value, to still be of use. And those skills include the ability to really understand and see clearly, to take in more and more information, and to be free of our own filters, our own ego needs, our own demands on reality, and instead to be able to take in reality and take in what is truly happening and not be just destroyed with despair. Being open to the world as it is these days, we have to be prepared for our own pain, our own emotional reactions, but we don't need to stay there. And a key component of warrior training is learning how to deal with these normal emotions. They're normal these days to feel grief, to feel sorrow, to feel rage and anger at what is going on, this terrible destruction of the human spirit and the spirit of life. But we learn how to take those emotions, not to feel peaceful, not to feel happy, but to just know how to deal with them so we can get back to work, so we can go into these places that provoke us emotionally. But we need to be available for the people there who are suffering. We also learn to develop a very stable mind. And what that means is I am no longer a victim of my own reactivity. I can respond rather than react. I can see when I'm getting angry and pause and choose to not say a word until I'm past that moment. And then I take in more information and I create a response that is probably more helpful, not all the time, but probably more helpful than just my blind reactivity. So we develop a stable mind where we're capable of seeing our own reactions, our own filters, and then developing clear seeing. The warrior skills throughout. Now, the warriors I'm describing, some people get upset by the militant, militaristic, warlike. Uh, most warriors do have weapons of destruction, but they're spiritual warriors, and deep in indigenous traditions, and especially in Asia, the warrior skills, the warrior weapons are compassion and insight. And in this day and age, so I've just spoken about insight. In this day and age, feeling compassion combined with clear seeing leads to the ability to act well. So we train in these ways of understanding, moving beyond our reactions, with clear intention that we want to stay, we want to serve. Spiritual warriors, well, all kinds of warriors actually, arise when something needs protection. And in this case, it's people. It's the human spirit and the spirit of life that needs our service, our protection, our care, and developing what's possible where it is possible. I believe that so much is possible at the local level. I learned about the strength of community and individual combined with individual courage. I learned that in South Africa. I learned that in townships. But where we are now, those of us who have these professional positions, who have the time and the motivation to train, then we join this long, long history of only a few people, warriors who are never a mass movement. These are people who are dedicated to serving and embodying the best qualities of human nature, of human beingness, in the face of so much corruption and despair. So we train, and it requires training. This is not a leadership development effort. This is a commitment, a vow to find ways, find the skills, the skillful means to be of service as the world grows more and more harsh. And to also be a light, to be the embodiment of generosity, of patience, of wholeheartedness, of faith in people. And we do that because we're able to do that because we train. And we train together because we do know you can't do this alone. You've already discovered this. You can't do this alone. You can't deal with the uncertainty and the emotions alone. So, I am excited beyond excited to be offering this to South Africa because the ground is already there. The need is already there. You have an enormous lineage of warriors who persevered and held the faith, stayed the course. And as one of my teachers said, it's just our turn now. It's just our turn. Like, no big deal, folks. It's just our turn to step forward and not work from self-protection, not be whining, not think, well, I want to achieve work-life balance here. No, this is not what warrior training is for. I'll just share it very personally. When I have my dark moments, which are a little less frequent, but I would say every 10 days, I notice today I'm just going to be in despair for the world. I'm just going to let the world in fully, and I know that if I do that, I won't stay there because I've done it often enough now. But on those days when I feel like, what is the point of going forward? What is the point? I go back to Mandela's cell on Robben Island, where I've spent quite a bit of time on Robben Island. Been there many, many times. First time I went there, I went in the actual boat that the prisoners had been taken in before it became a big tourist place, which is still very valuable. But I go back to Mandela's cell and I try and just tune into what kept you going, Madiba, what kept you going. And for me, sometimes I don't say that to a lot of people. I want to share it with you because it's like, really, Meg, you have to go to that extreme of a warrior to find your own grounding to keep going. But he's very alive in me, and I instantly, when I just tune in, I instantly get up and get going again. So you have this lineage in South Africa. So many people have stood up and acted on behalf of others, on community, for different causes, and it's just your turn now within South Africa to train as warriors for the human spirit. So I hope you will very seriously consider it and just step into that lineage. You have such strong shoulders there to rely on. So we'll have time for questions at the end. And of course, I only gave an overview of the training that is fully described in all the materials on SI's website. So, but I'll be quiet now and turn it over to you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Meg, for sharing all of that with us. I realize we often say the SI without, the acronym, and some people might not know who we are. So the SI is the Sustainability Institute. We're based just outside of Stellenbosch, for those that might not know us. And our work is predominantly in education, transformative education for just nourishing futures. And we do a lot of work with children and youth in the Lyndoch Valley. And we also run adult education programs, really trying to experiment as well in practice with what it means to live differently, to be different in this world, and to create what Meg sometimes refers to or has referred to in her work as islands of sanity. So trying to, in this chaotic world that we live in, do things that, that serve a different kind of future that we want to co-create and imagine together. So her work has been really influential for us, as I mentioned in the beginning. And when Meg, I met Meg in 2017 at the Schumacher College, and have been in touch with her ever since, and have invited her to lecture on some of the courses that we have for our university students. And when I reached out to her earlier this year to ask whether she would like to lecture again, she said, "Oh, what perfect timing! She would love to offer warrior training, and she's been thinking about who to partner with in South Africa." And so we started talking about offering what it would look like to offer this training together in partnership. And for me, it was a no-brainer to say yes. It was exactly what I think the SI the Sustainability Institute really would like to offer more of, and we really see a big need for this kind of training in South Africa. As Meg said, I think it's something that the world needs right now. But I think also looking back at the year that we've had, and you know, I think a lot of our the context that we live in here, there's high levels of violence, high levels of poverty. There are a lot of problems that we as South Africans deal with on a daily basis that are hugely challenging and sometimes really overwhelming. And so I think this training invites us to figure out how we can step up to that, how we can build resilience. And what I love about Meg's work is this idea of moving beyond hope, and really doing the work because we know it's the right work to be doing, not because we are attached to any particular outcome, which is a lifelong sort of skill to try and learn to not be attached to a particular outcome. But I found that for myself, at least, it's been a really guiding sort of principle in my life and in the work that I do at the Sustainability Institute. So we're really, really very privileged and honored, Meg, to host this training together with you. We're hoping for a really diverse cohort of people from different backgrounds, different areas within South Africa. You don't have to be based in the Western Cape. We are hoping that we can gather in person because, as Meg said, a big part of the training is really building community. And that is also a big part of the work that we do at the Sustainability Institute, is to build community for this kind of work. So we would like to gather for the first session and then also the last session in person, if COVID regulations and all sorts of things allow for that. So we're hoping to do that. But the rest of the training will, all of Meg's training obviously will be online. You'll be able to do that from wherever you are in the country. I think that's all that I'd like to say about it. And I'd like to actually invite Renata and Leah to speak a little bit about Be the Earth Foundation and the reason that they decided to come on board as supporters of the program, and maybe speak a little bit about the bursaries that are available for those that might need some financial support. You'll also see on the website, and I'll post the links to the training, I'll post them into the chat in a moment, where you can submit your application, but you'll see that there's different tiers for pricing. So we're really wanting to make this training accessible to as many people as possible. And if you are in any way that the price is preventing you from applying or from participating, please do reach out to us, because we really would like to be able to include everybody who really feels called to do this training. If Renata or Leah, if you'd like to take over and share a little bit more about Be the Earth. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks, Meg. It's so inspiring and so nice to be here and be able to support more people to have access to this opportunity. I'll just give a little bit of background on Be the Earth Foundation. We're a very small new family foundation. We're just under 2 years old of existence, and we're a hybrid fund that combines philanthropy with impact investing. And I think, well, a lot of what you both said resonate with our missions, but one of our main principles is acting from a feminine perspective, and that is connected to hope and well-being and emotions and embracing that and taking care of each other and welcoming instead of fighting the emotions. And I realized that we are actually very stuck in the trap of hope. I love that concept because we also like to spread hope and good news and nice work that is happening despite all the despair that we are witnessing at the moment in the world. Yeah, so we organize in a way that we, among other things, we like to provide scholarships to give more access to people who would like to take trainings that are aligned to our vision and our mission of a world that lives in harmony with other beings. I can send uh, the link soon because I get confused to typing and speaking at the same time. But one of the reasons we're doing that as well is because South Africa is one of our main geographies. We work with South Africa, UK, and Brazil as main geographies, and we have a deep love for that country. I spent a lot of time there as well. I actually, in the beginning of lockdown, was lucky enough to be stuck in Stellenbosch because it's such a beautiful nature and expensive place to be when you're stuck in a place, right? So we have a lot of love for that area, and I love the culture as well. As a Brazilian living mostly in Europe, I connect much more with the South African culture and livelihood and strength. And as Meg said very beautifully, I don't need to oversay that, but it's just a place that inspires me, and I know there's a lot to work on. And yeah, so as a Brazilian living in the UK, we also know where our strengths are, and South Africa is somewhere we really want and need to strengthen our network and our partners. And we love working in partnerships and creating relationship with the people we work with and support, and also debureaucratizing a bit the processes of due diligence and partnerships and reporting, because we come to know how much of a burden that is in processes. So we're trying to design something that makes sense to everyone in a way that brings joy and happiness and fulfillment rather than more work. I think everyone has already enough tasks to do, right? So going to the practicalities of these bursaries, we agreed an amount to donate to Sustainability Institute that will cover up to 50% of people's applications. So we don't have an X amount of bursaries fixed. Depends on how, how much people that are selected to the program, and that selection will be made by Sustainability Institute. Depends how much people can pay and are willing to afford, or other deals they can make, that how many people will be able to support, hopefully as much as possible, to bring a diverse group to the circle. And we actually, in terms of the process of how to apply, we have two links that you need to be aware of. One is the link from Sustainability Institute where you apply to the course itself. And the other link is to the Be the Earth Foundation's page where you apply to the bursary. I don't know.
We've posted the vote here already in the chat for you guys.
Thanks. Yes, so that's, let's say, the process, and we welcome you to join our newsletters and social media to have access to more opportunities like this. And we'd love to connect. I think if you're in this call, that already shows a lot of synergies between us. So we're happy to connect, and especially if you're around Stellenbosch, Cape Town, this area of South Africa, that's where we do most of our work. So I would love to, just learn more of what's happening there. We're already planning other things. So whoever wants to get in touch, I'm putting my email here, and Elias as well. And we're happy to develop and evolve the relationship, because I guess in the times of despair and when you choose to be a difference in the world, we need to find our peers and who we want to walk alongside with. So thanks so much, Meg, for creating this, and Vanessa for sharing that with us and enabling us to be a little part of this journey.
Well, Renata, your support is just so inspiring. So I thank you very much. I do need to explain that the application process for this is different than any other program I've known of, which is we ask you to, it's all on Sustainability Institute's website. We ask you to go very deeply into the description, to watch a few videos or podcasts that I've done describing why we need warriors at this time. What time is it on the clock of the world? And then you self-nominate. But you need to be, we've always used a contemplative process. Like, is this really for you? Can you make the effort? Can you set this as a priority? We've never wanted money. I've been doing this program for 6 years, starting on the 7th year in January. We have never let money be the issue to keep people from the program, because it just doesn't make any sense to let money be a block when, if you're really willing and committed to doing this training. So I would say that you fill out you go through the contemplations, you listen to, you get more information what this is, and then it's a very personal commitment. And once you're in that place of saying, yes, this is for me, I'm willing to make the commitment, then you fill out a very simple application process. And my experience now with hundreds and hundreds of applications is, if people have gone through the contemplation process, then you're in. I mean, there's very few people out of several hundred. I think maybe there have been 10 people who did not feel right, like they were expecting something else from the training or something. So you need to go through the process and really internally, contemplatively understand if this sings to your heart, if this gives you a path forward, if this really resonates deeply with your desire to serve this time. And then you apply, and then I would say, Vanessa, then it goes to Renata and Be the Earth. But first you have to get the applications in. So I hope you will, most people enjoy the contemplative process that we use for deciding whether this is for you. And it's all up on the website.
Yes, thank you, Meg. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we first need you to apply on the Sustainability Institute's website, and then go across to Be the Earth to submit your form for a bursary. We won't be able to allocate bursaries if we haven't received your application. So just make sure you're doing that process first. And yeah, I'd like to invite anyone who has a question or even just a comment to go ahead and ask that now. And maybe if I could ask you to just share with us your name, maybe where you're calling in from, and maybe what has sparked interest for you to join the call before you dive into your question. And feel free to dive in or to raise your hand, and I can keep an eye out on who might be raising their hand. Go ahead, Geeta.
Hi, everyone. My name is Geeta Govin, and I'm calling from Cape Town. And Vanessa very kindly shared the information with me about this possible training. And Meg, I looked at your website, and your Vaclav Havel statement really just grabbed my heart, because I've constantly engaged in doing the work with certainty that it's worth doing no matter how it turns out, but have experienced huge disappointments and difficulties. And it's taken me a long time to recover. And I'm about to embark on some quite big challenges. And I think that something like this would be amazing to really deal with me, my being, so that I can stay committed to what I'm committed to. So that's what brings me here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Geeta. What you just very briefly relayed is exactly why I founded Warrior Training. It's for people who are already actively engaged in their work, who want to persevere, who will persevere, but who have been really battered, bruised, or even gone into dark nights of the soul because the world is so harsh and there is so much failure. So being in that position and realizing there is, if I develop myself, I will be able to continue to serve this world. And that's what I heard in your very brief
Yes.
description. So thank you very much, Geeta.
Thank you for sharing that, Geeta. Michelle, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So I'm Michelle. I'm also calling in from Cape Town. And yeah, Meg, I also went onto your website when I saw the email come from the Sustainability Institute, and was also intrigued and moved by the quote of Havel. And in my other life outside of the university in Cape Town, I work with and engage with the Ecoversity space, and we had there was a discussion about hope, and Havel came up in full quote. And so yeah, so I think that for me, I also feel the despair, and being at the university where the mantra is me, myself, and I. There's you know, there's always a lot of blame for the outside, and you know, the corruption outside and government outside, and but not a lot of looking in. And I'm also wondering how to sustain the ability to be in the collective, because I'm finding that quite hard at the moment. And so, you know, even if one sort of builds some of the tools, you get depleted. And so, and I'm finding myself hard to communicate about coming back to the collective. Yeah, so that's what I have to share. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think we need to say the Václav Havel quote, the former president of the Czech Republic, after he participated in the revolution to create the Czech Republic. And he's a playwright. He was a playwright and a poet, sort of an accidental activist moving into political life, and then was a brilliant, brilliant president. And he said, hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something is worth doing no matter how it turns out. And I'd like to add your question about the collective. Were you speaking about the collective among warrior community, or the communities that you're part of, Michelle?
Well, the communities that I'm part of at the university, and also through our own discussions I'm in the sociology department of, what it means to be a decolonial department to teach in that way, or yeah.
Yes, well, I can answer this simply, but then Inga, I'd like you to come in. Inga has been in warrior training with me since 2015. But you're never going to feel at home in these places where we work. We're not going to change the university system. We can't change that dynamic. And the thing about warriors is, or anyone in that role, is you bind together with other warriors and you experience great loneliness. You anticipate feeling lonely when you're in your workplace, even with your family, if you're in your home place of your home, because most people will not see the world this way. And I joke with people, I have a very large family, and I joke with my friends. So whenever you want to feel good about the future, just go talk to some of my adult children here. They think everything's coming up fine and great. And you will feel we are set apart by our commitment, our dedication, and our view of what's happening. And that's why we bind together with other warriors. So Inga, would you just share a little bit from yourself, please?
Thanks, Meg. To answer that takes me back what you asked when you were in the Medieval cell, what keeps you going? And I think after quite a while now, come back to the vow. The vow is incredibly powerful, and it embodies everything. And it embodies everything, meeting to meeting. And each time you encounter people, it really is growing with the constant ability and capability, and it so becomes part of being part of any meeting or grouping like we are tonight, with a true sense of, yes, I may use these words, but when it becomes alive in you with clarity and the stillness for the wisdom to rise, and then you speak or act. I often catch myself preempting myself, but it's not easy. But that's not what it's meant to be. And but it certainly is worth it. And just enormously grateful for your work, Meg. It's been incredibly, to say it's empowering is probably less. It's been more than that. It's really given me what has been missing for a large part of my life. And for that, it's, yeah, couldn't go anywhere else.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Inge. Nikki, please go ahead.
So I'm working on a device that I'm not familiar with. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I'm in Stellenbosch as a rule, but I'm in Komiki tonight. It's lovely to meet you, Meg. I was holding you in with the kind of reverence that made me start to wonder if you actually exist in person, and it's nice to see the embodied version of you. It's lovely to sit with a bunch of people who are interested in this work. As a coach who works very much on my own, it can be quite lonely. And so the sense of community and shared interest is very encouraging. So I've worked in corporate in London and America, and I became very disillusioned with corporate. So I moved to nonprofit work, and I worked in nonprofit for maybe 10 years and have now moved into coaching. And I'm coaching, I'm doing mindfulness training and coaching with leadership teams of some of the big corporates in South Africa. And I can feel that I'm moving in a direction of focusing on conscious leadership and more mindful leadership. And that is why I thought that I was interested in the course. But what I've realized in listening to you speaking and even listening to that Havel quote, that why it has resonated with me so much is because it ties in with my training as a yoga teacher. And this idea of this concept of selfless service and the idea of just doing the work because it needs to be done. And what Vanessa said as well about becoming detached from a potential outcome and just doing the work because it needs to be done. That to me is just speaking so loudly, and it lets everything else fall away. And that is, it's moved from being daunting, a little bit daunting, because to be a warrior, you know, even the contemplative process is quite daunting, but it's somehow shifted it for me from being a burden almost to being something that I can't look away from. So thank you for this evening's explanation. It shifted something for me and I'm very excited.
I'm very grateful for that, Nikki. Thank you. Steve.
Good evening, Meg, and hello, Vanessa, and everybody, and thank you very, very much for setting up this this session. My name is Steve Hall, and I live in Johannesburg in South Africa. I've also been involved in leadership development, I guess, and team effectiveness for 27 years. And I think, Meg, I'm at that exact place of the deep, dark place of the soul with the news of the travel bans and the impact it has on our business. So my observation was that I think I'm only one of 3 men on this call, unless I get a couple of names wrong. And it is an astounding insight for me that most of this extraordinary work is in fact done by women. And all the leadership work that I've done in South Africa, wherever we've seen extraordinary examples of real warriors, 90% of them are women in the communities, in the townships. And I think there's a massive role for men to really realize this and to stand up. So that was an observation. My question, I think, has been answered just by being on this call, Meg, and that is that what happens when the warriors themselves need protection? And perhaps my insight,
Have
yeah,
each other. That's I have the warrior community when I falter and go into despair. That's how it always is, right? It's a core, it's a community, and
yeah,
one goes down and we someone's someone's really cheerful when I'm in despair. Someone has had the similar experience that's very hard and come out of it and can share that with me. The one thing that Steve is the son of Colin Hall, and I've known Steve since he was a mere teenager. Right? And but one of the qualities of being part of the community is that we don't feel alone. And if I bring my despair to you, you don't try and cheer me up with false hopes. You know, I don't know how many of you have this experience, but people say, well, it's really not that bad. You know, did you notice that over here somebody's doing really wonderful work? So that's a sign that things are going to get better. Or I get accused of being so dark and pessimistic, and I say, no, I'm a realist. When I'm with warriors, no one is trying to talk me out of the reasons for my moments of despair. We just try and see more clearly, okay, now what? Now what can I do? Because the external conditions are beyond our control and they have just shifted terribly. So now what can I do? But we're there to support each other, and we expect each of us will have real moments of darkness and real moments of inspiration. And this is Ubuntu come to life for me in the warrior community. Yeah. But we're not trying to make each other hopeful. We're trying to help one another stay clear about, okay, now what can I do? You can't bring in your clients now with the travel ban. What do I do now? Well, you have to deal with this, but you know.
Thank you, Meg.
Yeah. Anyone else? We are at the hour. So if you have any last question or comment, I would love to hear it. Well, we will then close this, and I just want to say again, first of all, Marjorie Naidu, thank you for the zebras. It's just how I want us all to feel in community. We each have different stripes, but we're really there for one another. And it has been wonderful to see your faces or just read your names. And I said to a friend last night, there's no group of people I would rather spend time with than South Africans. And that's been true again today. So I thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Meg, for being with us for this hour and for everyone else that joined us. I think the one thing that I wanted to say in closing is that I think in the sort of sustainability world that we work in, and sustainability is really no longer the word that we should be using, but in those kinds of circles, I think this idea of indulging in your despair can sometimes be perceived as self-indulgent, or it's not very accepted, because we have to be we have to be positive and hopeful, and otherwise what's the point? And I just wanted to say that I think there is incredible power that lies beyond that sort of despair that we often feel, the hopefulness, I think, and accepting that and being okay with indulging in our despair, and realizing that there's something beyond that. I think it's hugely powerful, and yeah, it really allows us to access something a lot more, a lot deeper, and really gives us a lot of resilience. So thank you so much for that. And in terms of deadlines, we do have a soft deadline on the 10th of January. So if you do want to apply, please try and apply before the 10th. There is a sort of a soft sort of intro session on the 15th of January. All the dates are on the website. And yeah, please reach out to us. I'll pop my email as well onto the chat. And please feel free to reach out to us for any questions, or yeah, anything that you'd like to share. We're here to answer. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to Inger as well, and Renata, and thank you again for the support, Renata and Leah. It's really very much appreciated. We're very excited that you guys are on board. And yeah, I hope we'll get to see some of your applications coming through.
Yes, I look forward to welcoming you into warrior training.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks so
everyone.
much.